being a journalist, I said, I cannot sit back and not do anything. I have to help others. If I live, I will serve. And so I am living in pain a lot, struggling a lot, but I am continuing to serve and really amplify the patient voice. I was living the life, and then eventually as a high profile news anchor based in Austin, Texas, doing national fitness and medical stories. And in an instant, after, dismissing many warning signs that I now advocate about, I was in the midst of trying to have a second baby and then found out that I had AML leukemia. And I was misdiagnosed twice, ended up getting on a plane thanks to connections that I had, ended up at Johns Hopkins for the fight of my life for an entire year, battling AML leukemia. Throughout that journey, that was real quarantine, separated from my then 2-year-old son. That journey lasted a year. It didn't work. I needed a bone marrow transplant, so it extended my time away from my son. It's been a rocky, as you mentioned, very tumultuous recovery. And then 5 years to the day post bone marrow transplant, I found out I had breast cancer. And they were telling me, well, that's because we probably gave you the gift of time, not the gift of life, because I had no other bone marrow match in the registry, being Latina. My sister was my match. And in the genetic markers they gave me, she gave me a marker called CHIP, which CHIP is a newly discovered genetic marker, which means you're going to get heart disease. They gave me back the leukemia marker. And then I got breast cancer, and they think it's either from the full body radiation or from my sister's DNA. How do we know that? My sister currently has breast cancer as we speak. There are trade-offs with everything we talk about in medicine, and it did give me the gift of time. I hope that time is to watch my son grow up and live a long, long, life, so I can continue to advocate and enjoy my family. But it has been a very rocky journey, and all of that journey, as I was sharing with you, and I share with you since we've known each other in our advocacy roles, led to a lot of depression and PTSD. And being a journalist, I said, I cannot sit back and not do anything. I have to help others. If I live, I will serve. And so I am living in pain a lot, struggling a lot, but I am continuing to serve and really amplify the patient voice. Well, I look back and sometimes I wonder, how did we do it? But I know what I did was I went into reporter mode, and I started to allocate and delegate roles. And I created what I call a pit crew. But I actually had to take out a spreadsheet and choose roles, just like you would know at your church or your synagogue, like, this person's going to help with my mother and find childcare. This person's going to help with our bills, like help me make sure they get paid on time, or help me find, launch a GoFundMe. This person's role is for meals. And I really started allocating roles based on what people's strengths and weaknesses were in a spreadsheet. But I had an advantage. I had privilege in the sense that I don't come from a privileged family, but I had connections. As a high profile news anchor, I had a huge pit crew and a huge spreadsheet. And I always say so I say to patients all the time, you have to wave the flag and ask for help. Even my sister, as she's gone through this breast cancer, she's like, I'm not an extrovert like you. I can't ask for help. I'm too ashamed. Saying you have to wave the flag. If you don't wave the flag, you're going to put extra burden on me. And I can't make all your meals, and I can't take you to because I have my own problems too. So I encourage everyone. What I did was create a pit crew, my own support system. And hospitals now, as you advocate, they're starting to learn that we need to build better support systems. But you also have to not rely solely on them. You have to be an equal partner in your own success and be your own hero, in the sense by humbling yourself and asking for help, whether that is financial help, getting your house clean, getting a meal, because you cannot do it alone. And you have to be your own hero, in the sense by waving the flag. I had to ask so many people for help. I still do for many times. And we could not have done that. My husband ended up losing his job at the end of the 1 year of sleeping at my side and trying to hold down a job that we didn't want him to lose. And that set him back professionally, which we almost lost our house. And we've gone through a lot. Financial toxicity is huge. But my best advice to patients is, the minute you get that diagnosis, really lay out what your needs are and how to delegate. Like, think of, if you go to church, how they do it in church. So-and-so is working, you have somebody who's who's in the band, somebody who's doing, so whose strengths can you lean on and section it out so not one person carries that whole burden. And that's really how we got through it. And then when I had breast cancer during 2020, that was even harder to ask for help because nobody could come to your house and help. And a GoFundMe is not a plan. And we don't think of that when we think of preparing for illness, when we do retirement plans and other plans, but we needed a GoFundMe or we were going to lose our house. I needed that money to help my 75-year-old mother raise my 2-year-old son for a year. So the GoFundMe was so important, and we need to work on a better way to support patients because I was really caught in a unique situation. And I always say, if you're not underserved when you start with cancer, you might be when you're done because the bills start to mount. So I didn't qualify for anything because they were basing it on my salary as a news anchor. So I had no help, but we had no income. So our debt was going, after spending a year in the hospital, you're thinking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we qualified for nothing. So we had to rely on friends with a GoFundMe, and everybody should raise money in some capacity, and it's okay to do that. Finding someone for childcare and reaching out to, if you have children, reaching out to childcare facilities and say, I have cancer or my niece has cancer. Can you offer a reduced rate? And they did. They offered a reduced rate for my son to go to school. And because my 75-year-old mother couldn't take care of him all day, we had him there till 5, and then she needed extra help at night. There are many ways. If you can have someone clean your house for you so you can spend more time with your loved ones, there's so many ways that support can happen. And then support can happen even after. So when you go into survivorship, you need a break, but you're too broke to go. I kept saying, I'm involved now in a lot of research at MD Anderson and the Mays Cancer Center. And there's a lot of research looking at the stress and the connection to cancer. And then they're breaking it down even deeper to the stress and connection to cancer or cancer recurrence for cancer survivors. And they're finding they're learning that when they're getting patients and survivors into trials and having them doing therapeutic yoga and breathing and lowering their cortisol levels, they have a lower rate of recurrence of cancer, which is powerful. So Arm Up for Life is my nonprofit that I launched from my bedside because I reported from my bedside during my journey, being a network medical reporter. And I just said, the story is bigger than me. I'm learning so much from these doctors that it's not getting shared with patients. And one of the biggest things I learned was that you have to prepare your body for illness. And I said, why? How did I end up here as the clean eating, green drinking yoga enthusiast? And they said, because guess what? Bad things can still happen to you. What sets you apart is how you showed up. And you showed up fit for this fight. And our hands are tied with so many patients here. They said, the more fit you go into illness, the better you present to us as a medical team, the better you're positioned to prevail. Now, I had 25% chance of survival, but they said, look, you have all 25. I have people on this call who have 25% chance of survival or should, and they're not fit enough to get the chemo, same dose as you, and now they have 10 or 12. So my message began saying, okay, we're going to call this the 3P protocol to be possible. Prepare, present, prevail. You have to prepare your body for illness so you could present well to your medical team and position yourself to prevail. And preparing can start the day of diagnosis. It can start in the midst of your treatment. It can start well before you ever got diagnosed if you have other people in your family and you have the genetic markers for it. We're prehab. It's called prehabilitation. So we're prehabbing, you, me, Andrew, everybody we know, we're prehabbing every day with the decisions we make. And so when I learned that was like really this eureka moment that I have to get this message out that patients need. The more fit you go in, the better you present, the better you're positioned to prevail. That means your patient outcome, your chance of survival goes up when you walk, when you stay mobile. Mobility matters. When you focus on risk reduction and lowering your stress levels. All of this plays a role in how well you go through treatment and your success rate. So talking to patients, I would say it's never too late to get started, to start reducing your stress, even though you're in the midst of turmoil. Try to find time to meditate and take some deep breathing and lower your cortisol levels, because there are studies that show it can cause a recurrence. You don't want to end up like me, where I've had 2 cancers. I'm always praying that there's no third, that there's another shoe going to drop. But we have to really, in the midst of the chaos, still take care of our health and make decisions to eat right and exercise. And it can make a difference. And like they told me, you have all 25% chance, because you're getting exercise, you're eating clean, you're meditating, and that is a huge component of your patient outcome and your success. You have to be your own advocate. And there is a 4th unofficial P, and it's called being a pain in the neck. And you really have to be pushy and push for answers and be your own hero and advocate. When you're asking what other voices need to hear this, and that's why I go and talk to conferences, because it's the pharma companies need to hear this, your providers need to hear it, the nurses need to hear it, everybody who's involved in this whole ecosystem. That's why I call it a pit crew so much with Armor Up for Life, because we need a team invested in our success to successfully get us to the finish line. And that means that our provider needs to lean in and listen and ask questions like, how do you have transportation to get to this clinical trial? Or ask about your family history, or ask about your comorbidities. Like for me, I have baggage. When I was going through treatment for breast cancer, and I tried to explain, I'm a unicorn, I had leukemia, I had a transplant, I don't even have my own DNA. You need to talk to my leukemia doctor. You cannot operate in a silo. Call him up, find out what is best. And I felt like I had to be a reporter doing email intros. And I said, this is so much work. It should not be this hard to survive. So I say that the providers need to listen. They need to listen. And I understand that they're busy with charting, and there's a shortage, and they only have 15 minutes. So to the patient, bring in bullet points, help get them the most information in those 15 minutes. But to the provider, be aware of your implicit bias, and know that you need to ask the patient more questions than just, how are you feeling, or your counts are good. Like, it needs to go, do you have transportation? Do you have childcare? What's getting in the way and keeping you from coming to this treatment that you need, or keeping you from taking this drug? So we have the providers, we have the pharmaceutical companies, and the pharmaceutical companies have a lot of patient support programs. They're called PSPs. Who knew? I never knew about that. I told them at the conference I was just at. How would I have any idea that all this work exists? Nobody said. I was on 40 drugs from probably so many different companies. So to patients, if you are having trouble, there are programs that pharmaceutical companies have that you can say, I'm on this particular company's drug. Call. They may have a nurse navigator who could talk to you. But really, we all need to come together and collaborate and let each other know we're here for you, and let the patient. So it comes down to communication and knowing what's available. If you're a patient, you're listening, you can't just say, you could be at the best institution or in a rural community. You can't just take that one person's answer as the Bible for you. That you have to say, no. I always say, get a second opinion, even when you like the first. I loved my first opinion. They said I didn't have cancer, but I still didn't feel right. So I got another opinion, and they said I didn't have cancer. It took my fertility doctor to tell me I had AML leukemia, which is why the 2 doctors who misdiagnosed me, I said, that's it. I'm going to Johns Hopkins. They know what they're doing there. And they have to save my life. Be very clear with your doctor what barriers you have in place: childcare, transportation, finances. Ask him or her, what resources can they connect you to the patient navigator? If you're not getting answers, keep going up the chain. Ask the chain of command, ask for the financial navigator. We're starting to hear more navigators. Now they're taxed. They don't have enough help, but keep asking and keep pushing. And eventually somebody is going to help you, but don't just take one opinion and think that is the best opinion for you. There's so many communities who are underserved, who certainly need help, and they get left out. So many times we hear at conferences about these high level institutions. And I kept saying, if there were patient voids at the top, what's happening in our rural communities when it's one doctor with not getting a second opinion, and that's the only doctor you have access to? So one of the biggest voids, I will say, in the Latino cancer community, I spoke at their conference earlier this year, and they're expecting a 142% increase in cancer cases just among Latinos. This year among Latinos, they also say that that the number one killer for Latinos is cancer. Again, there are other startling statistics for other underserved communities. I just happen to know those off the top of my head while we're talking. But one thing I say is we're talking a lot about diversity in clinical trials, and that's great. And I'm glad that it is now a hashtag and a trend. But if we can't get our communities, like my Latino community, to get into a screening because they don't want to know and they're in denial, or for whatever reason, they're not going and there's trust issues, they're not even going to make it to a clinical trial. So we need to not put all of our eggs in one basket about clinical trials, which are important, and having diversity and fitting more people in, and focus on the voids in the Latino community, the Black community, the Asian community, the Indian community, the lesbian, gay community, all these communities that have certain cultural competencies and different reasons that they don't go into screenings because there's trust issues, and focus on, let's get them into screenings and build trust at every point along the way in the journey. The quickest thing you could do is start raising your voice by yourself through social media, because that's something everybody has access to. So I would start thinking of, when you share your post, share not just what happened to you, where it's, it doesn't have to be an angry post, something about what you went through and what the takeaways are. And you can post that through social media just to share, like, hey, you should get this screening. Did you get your screening? Did you get your mammogram? Did you get your colonoscopy? And that can eventually grow, but then also reach out to organizations for areas that you're passionate about. If it's prostate cancer or leukemia, is it breast cancer, or is it overall just all cancers? Wherever you want to get involved, and reach out and say, I want to help in some way. It's hard work to survive. And I say that as I struggle, and I'm very transparent about my depression and PTSD. And I say some days it's so hard, and I have to remember, that we all have purpose. And, for me, anybody who's going through struggles, if you don't feel like you have purpose, find advocacy, because that helps me with my depression. When I went from living the life, fighting for my life, and so lost, wanting to take my own life because there was no tools in survivorship for me, my news director reached out to me and gave me purpose and helped me get started. And I say, if you give someone purpose, you feel like the world needs you. So even in your suffering depression, you're less likely to check out, because the lives you can impact.